Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating, honestly deeply provocative philosophical essay. Now, just a quick note up front, all the audio and visual content generated in this explainer comes directly from our source material, authored by the founder of Life Chun Yuan, Shui Feng. In his text, which is titled The Root of Suffering for the Poor and the Path to Liberation, Shui Feng is trying to answer a massive question. What is the actual root cause of societal suffering? But he doesn't just stop at diagnosing the problem. No, he outlines a radically utopian solution that he claims is literally already functioning out there in the real world. So we're going to impartially analyze his arguments, break down his pretty unique definitions of society, and look exactly at how he thinks we can eradicate human misery for good. Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to follow a classic problem, agitation, solution structure today. First, we'll look at the true root of suffering. Then, who are the poor? Third, why moral preaching fails. Fourth, the utopian communist solution. And finally, number 5, the life oasis experiment. Part 1, the true root of suffering. Let's look at the external causes of misery. So Shui Feng actually kicks off his essay by totally setting aside internal psychology. He wants to focus purely on the external causes of our misery. And this breakdown brilliantly illustrates his really striking core claim. If you look at all the misery in the world, a staggering 75% of it comes laterally, meaning it comes directly from poor people tormenting other poor people. Think about that for a second. He argues that, yeah, sure, harsh governments and natural disasters absolutely exist, but they would never cause absolute total despair if the people at the bottom simply supported one another. Moving to part 2, who are the poor? He gives us a much broader definition here. This naturally brings up a crucial question. When Xuanfeng says the poor, who exactly is he talking about? Well, according to his essay, basically everyone is categorized as poor unless you happen to be ultra-rich, a high-ranking official, a famous expert, or some big celebrity. It's not just farmers or laborers or small vendors. He includes city guards, police officers, soldiers, teachers, and even civil servants. In his view, the vast majority of the population belongs to this exact struggling class. And here's where he points out a really tragic paradox within this massive group. Shui Feng observes that instead of showing mutual sympathy, instead of banding together because they all share these struggles, the people at the bottom of society are actually the most ruthless toward one another. He literally writes that the poorer you are and the lower you fall on the social ladder, the more intense and vicious the bullying becomes. He maps out how this builds into this visceral, repeating cycle in everyday reality. Step 1. A person in this broad poor category gains just a tiny fraction of power or status. Step 2. Rather than using that new leverage to help anyone out, they lose all compassion, all pity, just gone. And step 3, they cruelly oppress someone who is even more vulnerable than they are. He gives these incredibly specific, vivid examples from Chinese society. Take city guards, known as chengguan. They're poor themselves, right? But give them a little authority and they'll brutally knock over an elderly street vendor. Or civil servants, who will maliciously suppress their own colleagues just out of jealousy. Teachers arrogantly scolding parents. From siblings fighting to neighbors feuding, he sees it as this relentless, unavoidable cycle of lateral violence. Which leads us to the exact rhetorical question Shui Feng poses in the text. Why is it like this? I mean, if life is already so hard, why make it harder for each other? Posing this question shifts our explainer away from just looking at the surface symptoms of bullying and forces us to analyze the deep, underlying systemic agitation that's actually fueling it. Section 3. Why moral preaching fails. We'll explore the total breakdown of ancient wisdom. Zhu Feng points out that our ancestors recognized this cruelty a really long time ago. For literally thousands of years, philosophers and religions have desperately tried teaching benevolence, righteousness, and morality. Yet, according to him, these solutions have entirely failed. Why? Well, because when moral teachings inevitably collide with the harsh reality of survival, that brutal, everyday pressure of money, the teachings just shatter. Faced with a choice between surviving materially or acting morally, people almost always choose immediate self-interest. The reality of survival is just way more ruthless than any philosophical reasoning. He boils this all down to one core concept, which he calls survival anxiety. This is that constant, gnawing fear about basic needs: food, clothing, shelter, health, security. And crucially, Xufeng argues that this anxiety is permanently locked into place by two very specific systemic structures: private ownership and the traditional marriage system. Because we're forced to secure resources privately just for our own isolated families, we're thrown into a state of relentless competition and fear. And that fear entirely overrides our moral compass. To really drive this point home, he uses this highly specific and honestly surprisingly blunt anecdote in the essay. He writes that trying to solve material or physiological needs with moral preaching is just absurd. As he puts it, you cannot cure a 27-year-old single man's loneliness by telling him to go study Buddhism or act like a saint. The guy simply needs a partner. Trying to suppress basic human needs with morality is, in his words, like climbing a tree to catch fish. It's just entirely the wrong tool for the job.
All right, part 4, the utopian communist solution. Let's look at his radical alternative.
Having completely broken down the failure of morality under the crushing weight of survival anxiety, we now move to Xufeng's ultimate, highly provocative solution. So the crucial point is this: he claims the absolute only way out is to enter a true communist society. And to be crystal clear, he is not talking about modern political parties here. He means a literal utopian system where private ownership is totally abolished and all survival fears regarding food, housing, and medical care are entirely eliminated. If you remove the anxiety, he argues, you completely remove the reason people torment each other. Now, strictly as an impartial explainer of this text, it's really important to report his observations on how this idea is received in the modern world. Xufeng notes that globally, very few people actually believe in this utopian ideal anymore. Most just view it as an impossible myth. He even makes the politically charged observation that modern Communist Party members often treat true communism as merely a slogan, to the point where authorities have actively suppressed his own community. He views this as a profound irony, that a community actually striving for true communal living faces intense resistance from those exact institutions. Which brings us to Section 5, the Life Oasis Experiment, a real-world utopia. But here's the thing. Xufeng doesn't just leave his solution as some theoretical pipe dream. He introduces Life Oasis. This is a real-world community created by his organization Life Chanuan, and he claims it has actually achieved this exact utopian vision. According to the text, this isn't just an idea on paper. At the time he wrote this, he stated this pure communist community had already been running successfully and peacefully in China for 11 years. So what does that actually look like? Well, these are the results of his experiment. In Life Oasis, because all basic needs are guaranteed, Xufeng claims that the poor tormenting the poor dynamic has completely vanished. I mean, think about it. Why bully someone when you aren't competing for survival? He writes that in this environment, honest, hardworking people are finally respected. Furthermore, he claims it creates this profound social harmony. Men transform into responsible, upright gentlemen, women become gentle, loving ladies, and the elderly and children are simply able to thrive in total peace. He brings his essay to a definitive close with a very strong summary. He concludes that there is literally only one path to end the tragedy of the poor. As long as private ownership and survival anxiety exist, humans will just continue to destroy each other. Only by completely removing those material anxieties can we ever hope to find true peace. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question to ponder. Is solving material anxiety the true key to unlocking human morality? Is our ability to be good to one another merely a byproduct of having our basic needs met? Xufeng certainly believes so, and his Life Oasis philosophy definitely offers a radical perspective on how we might restructure society to find out. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and we'll see you next time.